Welcome back again. This is part 3 of the 3-part series of the last part in drug basics. For the first 2 parts, we talked about what are drugs and how do they work. We talked about how drugs get in and out of the body. And for this lecture, we'll be talking about tolerance and withdrawal. So what happens when people take drugs for a while? So drug tolerance is a process by which the body adapts to drug use. So some drugs become more effective with time or with more frequent use. For example, antidepressants. It takes a while for antidepressants to build up in the brain in a way that is therapeutic or effective. But generally, that's an exception. And drugs tend to be less effective over time. And that's because the body adapts and responds to chronic drug use in 3 ways. The first is that the liver creates more enzymes to break the drug down. So, evolution and our bodies are designed to help keep us alive. And when a drug is entered into the biological system, the body's reaction is to adapt to it in a way that lets the organism survive. And so, if it is a toxic substance, like most drugs are, the liver responds by increasing the amount that it can digest or process to inactivate the drug. And so then what happens is more of the drug is needed to achieve the same effect, because the body has gotten better at eliminating the drug, reducing the bioavailability of the drug, just because it's adapting to the chronic use. Another way that tolerance is built is through the body's removal of receptors for the drug. So with chronic drug use, the receptor sites are getting bombarded with a lot of the substance, just chronic, constant, boom, 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 drugs coming at these receptors. And the body responds by saying, okay, well, we don't need as many of these receptors because there is so much of this drug coming at us. What we'll do is we'll eliminate the number of receptor sites that are available. And that's this sort of protective mechanism to resist overstimulation of those receptor sites. Again, it's the body protecting itself from a bombardment or chronic use of a substance. And so then again, because the receptors are being removed or being depleted in the body, then more of the substance is needed to achieve the same effect. Again, that tolerance is being built. And then a third method of tolerance, the development of tolerance, is an environmental impact on the user. So using a substance chronically in the same environment starts to create a learning process. This is like Pavlovian. So if you're a psych major, you might be familiar with Pavlov's dogs. And, they got conditioned to salivate in response to a bell because the bell was being paired with their food. That same type of conditioning response can happen to drug users, where the drug is being paired with a particular environment, and so then their response to that drug is being paired with that environment. And basically, again, the body's way to protect itself from chronic drug use, the part of the physical response that's being conditioned here is the body's attempt to counteract the drug effects. So the body learns, when I'm in this place, I'm about to get hit with a bunch of drugs. So I'm going to protect myself from those drugs by doing various body functions. So, for example, a heroin user who uses heroin in the same place every time they shoot up, the body learns to respond protectively. So heroin slows down the breath, right? We'll talk more about this, but it slows down breathing and heart rate. for a chronic heroin user, when they enter the environment where they normally inject heroin, their body will begin to speed up their breathing and their heart rate in anticipation of the incoming drug that the body learns is going to lower the heart rate. So it's a preemptive way to reduce the effect of the drug on the body. And that's another way that tolerance is being built. So that heroin user then needs to use more of the heroin in order to experience the same effect. And this is why if the person leaves their familiar environment and injects the same amount of drug that they're used to taking in the place in the sort of typical place that they use, they may overdose because the body does not have the same conditioned response to protect itself outside of that very familiar setting. Additionally, with chronic drug use over time, there may be effects of stopping using the drug. And so after extended periods of time, the user may end up needing the drug to feel normal. So the body counteracts and adapts to the drug, becomes tolerant of the drug, to the point that the user is now dependent on the drug to function. And that if you take that drug away, the body is still engaging in these strategies to counteract the drug, but there is no drug. And so now the body's adaptations to the drug are now causing problems for the person. They're disrupting body function. And so, pardon me, I think I've lost my, here we go. So the time that it takes to get back to normal functioning without drug use, the time for the body to adapt back to not using drugs really varies depending on the drug. So it can range from days to years. And this is what we're talking about when we mean withdrawal. We're talking about what happens in the body when a user has become tolerant of drugs and then they stop taking the drug. And again, those mechanisms of protection, right? The increased liver enzymes, what were the other ones? The removal of the receptor sites. These biological processes have taken place in someone who uses drugs chronically. And then when the drug stops, those systems are still go. And so having the body adapt to drugs and then taking the drugs away means that those adaptations can be really damaging and in some cases life-threatening. And so sometimes actually medical supervision is needed to help the body recalibrate to this a state of non-drug use. And that's it for lesson 2.